It's time now for our visionary keynote entitled End of Traditional Agencies, the Impact of AI on the Advertising and Marketing Industries. Our visionary keynote will highlight the challenges and the opportunities associated with using AI in marketing. He'll explore how AI-powered tools are enabling hyper-personalized campaigns, challenging the creative dominance of traditional agencies. Plus, he'll share the opportunities AI creates for innovation and efficiency, and the existential threats it poses to established agencies. Please join me in welcoming Sir Martin Sorrell, founder of WPP and founder and executive chairman of S4 Capital.
Can I ask you just one thing?
Yes, sir.
So have we got time for questions or not?
You have 16 minutes and 42 seconds to use as you wish.
Okay, fine. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about questions and answers afterwards. So let me just sort of set the picture a little bit as to the place of AI. With the world at the moment, or maybe for the foreseeable future, is facing a number of major challenges, which I think have relevance to what I'm going to say around AI. We have three major geopolitical issues, and very simply they are US-China relations or the lack of them. That's the first one. Secondly, Russia, and thirdly, particularly relevant for this part of the world, Iran. Those three issues, it may not seem they're important in the context of AI, but I think they are in terms of what we're doing with our clients. So think about those in the background first. I think they're impenetrable issues that will dominate our thinking for many years to come, but put them at the back of your minds for a minute. They raise two big implications for our clients. Firstly, they raise implications around geographical choice. Over the last 30 or 40 years, we've been blessed with peace in the world largely. I mean, there have been issues to deal with, but broadly it's been pretty peaceful. And global growth has been pretty strong, above 3%, very little inflation, and very low interest rates. The world in the future is going to have much more challenged growth, certainly not above 3% generally, but probably below 3%. Structural inflation that is difficult to deal with, and as a result, interest rates at a higher rate. That places great pressure on our clients to choose growth regions in much more efficient ways. So the world's growth pattern is going to be dominated by North and South America, much underestimated in terms of Latin America, but North and South America, by the Middle East, and also by Asia, with one qualifier by Asia. If you are big in Asia as a client, if you're already 15 or 20% of your sales, and China is currently about $18 trillion out of a total of $106 trillion worldwide. But if you're larger than 10 or 15%, say 15 or 20%, do you really want to be bigger in China given the Taiwan risk? So if you're an Apple or a Tesla with 15 or 20%, question mark bigger. If you're a Unilever at 9% or Reckitt at 7 or Pepsi at 3%, you probably want to be bigger. So Asia, yes, but given the qualifier on China with the Taiwan risk, obviously India, Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, the Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, all offer significant growth opportunities. Africa, I think, currently is challenging because of the volatility. We have more conflicts in Africa than we've ever had. And so Africa is a question mark. And I left out Europe deliberately because the five big economies of Europe, that's the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, although they are big, around $3.5 trillion of GDP, they offer very little growth. So that our clients are really focused on those regions I said, North and South America, the Middle East, I think the Middle East is particularly notable because you see here in Dubai and UAE, also in Saudi, the vision around those countries is significantly different. It's not just about rebranding through the Olympics or the World Cup or Expo or Formula One. It goes much deeper than that, changing the cultural and social way that the rest of the world thinks about Saudi Arabia or the UAE or indeed the region. I remember a speech by the Crown Prince where he talked about the Arab countries being the new Europe, and that caused a lot of sword rattling and a lot of interest and engagement as a result. So geographical fragmentation is very much top of the agenda with our clients, and the choice of regions is really important. It's no longer about globalization on a huge scale. Globalization is still there, but it's very much a focus on fragmentation. So that's one thing. The second thing is efficiency and economy. I mentioned the European economies. Being efficient and economic is really important too. So with that as background, there are three things that our clients are very focused on at the minute. The first is agility. The single most important corporate attribute that clients are really focused on agility. Every CEO talks about agility, but their ability to deliver it, both on the client side, and I think it applies to agency too, has been limited. So agility is a corporate attribute. Secondly, taking back control in an AI age where data and control of content is really important. Taking back control is really important too. After the great financial crisis in 2008, there was a tendency for clients driven by finance and procurement functions to outsource a lot of their activity to agencies. You may find that strange coming from somebody in the agency business, but I think control of content, control of data and analytics, media planning and buying is really important. So that's the second most important thing. And the third thing that's really important is control of first-party data. Signals from the platforms and control of first-party data is really important. So what we're starting to see, we have three models at S4 and our operating brand Monks. Three models. Firstly is the traditional outsource model to agencies. Secondly, the embedded model where we embed people inside clients. And the third is the in-house model. We're the subject of a Harvard Business School case study with T-Mobile and Sprint around the in-housing of media planning and buying. So with that as background, let me just turn to AI, which is the subject that I'm really focusing on today. And we see AI impacting our industry in 5 major ways currently. The first is in copywriting and visualization. Copywriters and art directors, their work is really, time to market is being reduced drastically in the last couple of years. So what took us 3 weeks or 3 days literally takes us hours in terms of time to market in producing advertising. Now that's not necessarily a good thing from an agency point of view, because we and our competitors sell time. And if you're creating things in less time, there's obviously a paradox there, and revenues will be reduced. And I would say employment in copywriting and visualization will be reduced too. So that's one area. The second area, which is probably the area of greatest focus at the moment, is hyper-personalization at scale. So what I call the Netflix model. Many of you in this audience will be Netflix subscribers. You will know that the way that Netflix communicates with you in a highly personalized way. You may choose a film. You may come out of that film and you may be asked as to why you dropped your engagement. You may like a film, you may rate a film, and as a result be asked about whether you would like other content. That model, using the signals from the platforms and the first-party data that Netflix has, is the model of the future in terms of marketing. And the biggest use case that we have at the moment in the industry is the General Motors personalization case that we've been appointed recently as their foundational agency. They have 4 upper funnel creative agencies, 4 small boutiques. They have moved out 2 major holding companies from their marketing model, and we are the foundational agency using the upper funnel creative big ideas, creating, producing, and distributing a content at scale globally. General Motors is the 11th largest advertiser in the United States, the 19th worldwide, and this model is a model that most CEOs that we engage with, if not all, really are interested in deploying using, as I say, the first-party data and signals at scale. So that's the second area. Interestingly, we are shifting our remuneration model from a retainer, from a time-based model to an output model. So number of assets used, price per asset falling, but number of assets used on a huge scale. For a Netflix series before, we might use 1 million assets. Now we are using multiples of that to propagate content at scale. So that's the second area. The third area is media planning and buying. The 6 holding companies, one of which I developed over 3 years, 33 years of engagement, Group M and WPP, that employs something like 35,000 people. I would say over the next 3 to 4 years, they will not be employing that number of people. Media planning and buying will be improved by sophisticated use of algorithms. The media buying industry this year will hit $1 trillion in terms of volumes. 700 billion of that will be digital, 300 billion will be traditional. That 700 billion is concentrated in Google or Alphabet at around 250 billion. At Meta at 150, so that makes about 400 billion. With Amazon at 60 billion, so 460, and TikTok outside China, because that figure of $1 trillion excludes mainland China. TikTok outside China at 40 billion. So you're talking about 500 billion out of the 700 billion in digital being in those 4 platforms, the other 2 major ones being Alibaba and Tencent. Those 6 platforms, 3 Western, 3 Eastern, dominate the digital space. So media planning and buying will be very similar to what you see happening in investment management. BlackRock, for example, just announced that it manages $11 trillion. That $11 trillion in investment management is managed through sophisticated use of algorithms, and that will be the same for our industry. You already see it with Google. You already see it with Meta, with PMax, Performance Max, and Advantage Plus. The use for small and medium-sized enterprises of sophisticated algorithms in media planning and buying. So that's the third area. The fourth area of major impact is general agency and client efficiency. I'll give you one specific example. We have a joint venture with NVIDIA, with AWS and Adobe in outside broadcasting. An event like this, or a football match, or whatever it happens to be, golf tournament, in traditional terms, a traditional broadcaster would have to buy an outside broadcasting truck for about $10 million. They'd amortize that over 5 years at $2 million a year. We can provide an AI-driven, cloud-assisted solution, remote solution, at a cost of $100,000 to $200,000. So you're talking about an 80 to 90% cost reduction. It's a good example of how traditional broadcasting, where the pressure is in terms of advertising revenues, it's that 300 billion that I mentioned in the context of trillion of spending, that is being pressurized, and we see very significant opportunities to reduce costs. The final area, the fifth area that we see, is what we call democratization of knowledge. Traditionally inside companies, people control verticals and vertical capabilities or client-based solutions through control of information. AI is going to democratize knowledge inside organizations. So let me give you an example from NVIDIA. Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, doesn't have the traditional management span of 12 direct reports. He has 51 direct reports. Jaap Zijderveld, who runs EMEA, has 40 or so direct reports. Doesn't indulge in many one-to-one meetings, probably puts that to one side, but sets objectives for the direct reports because information has been spread horizontally through the organization. So AI is going to have a very dramatic, and is having a very dramatic impact on the organizational structure of companies, and no longer will they be vertically organized, they will be horizontally organized, and subject to privacy and obviously confidentiality. Information will be spread throughout the organization. So to sum up, those are the 5 areas that we see huge impact and disruption of the traditional agency model. And no longer, I think, will they have the scale in terms of people. They will be investing much more capital in building very efficient and economic operations. Do we have any time for a question? We have 30 seconds.
Thank you very much. We have 30 seconds. Who has a very quick question? Yes, sir, in the front here. Go ahead.
Thank you. The question is, I run a brand and communication agency at present, and in the past when we launched in Saudi, to compete with the likes of WPP was a bigger challenge. But with the advent of like AI tools and stuff, do you think the gap is actually going to shrink between boutique agencies and bigger global agencies?
Well, I mentioned the digital marketplace, so 700 billion out of $1 trillion. The concentration in the 6 platforms, 500 billion in those 4 platforms, 3 Western, 1 Eastern. The net result of that is the platforms are going to get much closer to the clients. Agencies, in my view, will become validators for the platforms. In the old days, or previously, if you look at Google, Alphabet, they employ about 170,000 people. My old agency, WPP, still employs about 113. When I was there, it was about 140,000 people. 200,000 if you included associates and affiliates. It was very labor intensive. Today, Google has a market cap of 2 trillion. WPP has a market cap currently of $10 billion, but they still employ relatively high numbers of people in comparison to a Google. So Google is very capital efficient. And in an AI-driven world, what is the source? The source of differentiation is capital expenditure. So very capital-driven models, the labor content will be reduced drastically, and scale in media planning buying will not be the differentiating factor, it will be brain power. So close relationships with the platforms, already with Advantage Plus and PMax, you're seeing disintermediation of the agencies at the small and medium-sized level. So my advice would be to develop very strong relationships with the platforms, principally the 6, but obviously Microsoft, NVIDIA itself, Apple. Microsoft generates about 19 billion of ad revenues, Apple about 11 or 12 billion. Those platforms, plus of course, the smaller platforms, Snap is about 5.5, 6, so they're pretty diminished, plus the 3 big software companies, Oracle, Adobe, and Salesforce. Those are, in my view, are going to be the big players, and the market is going to concentrate much more closely around the platforms. The platforms already account for the concentration of 70% of the market, the digital place. So the position of the smaller agencies, it's not going to be media buying power. The other thing I should just get in as we're sitting here in Dubai, transparency in the media planning and buying marketplace is going to become the thing. Blockchain, as well as AI, is going to reduce and eliminate the frictions in the system, which, by the way, have been a cause of tremendous frustration in the media system, particularly in MENA. So all that friction that you have, discounts, rebates, all that, which have been a great source of concern and attention over time, and I think in a short period of time, are going to be eliminated. So that will place the smaller agency in the media planning and buying area on a much better footing.
Sir Martin Sorrell, thank you so much for being with us. We were fortunate to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.